Friends, listeners, I think this is the appropriate way to start this conference because the people who are dealing with domestic violence, they are a kind of a family, they are a group of friends. I would like to thank the organizers, I would like to thank the audience here in this room and the ones who are watching us at home. On Sunday, our President and the Minister of Justice recognized the people who are fighting against domestic violence. These were 8 people, and there could be more of them. We know that there are many more of these people fighting against domestic violence. But these 8 people represent the work you do on a daily basis to fight, to stand against domestic violence, to help the victims to deal with the abusers, and to also notice the secondary victims. Is violence a reason or a consequence? I suppose we all agree that it's a bit of both. Where does violence start and where does it end? Thinking about life of a person, then in many cases both the roles of the victim and abuser start from an early childhood, from our childhood experiences, from the supporting role of the parent. This has a major effect on the life of a person. If a child is raised in a violent environment, they see violence on a daily basis. When the parent is ambivalent, the child never knows what the reaction of the parent will be in one and the same situation. When the child acts in the same way, but the parent acts differently. Sometimes they're kind, sometimes they are violent. This is where the ball starts to roll, and we never know what will become of a person, whether they will be an abuser or a victim. But the consequences are harsh. The consequences can be felt physically and mentally. These consequences give us work that we actually shouldn't be doing. This problem shouldn't exist. Do we recognize violence? What does violence look like? Well, actually, we can't recognize it. When we are among our colleagues, we take a bus or a tram, we walk around in the streets, we never know what kind of people are passing us by, what kind of people are sitting next to us. We don't know what's happening behind closed doors at home where nobody sees them. Whether this person goes home against her will, they never know what's ahead of them, whether it will be a nice evening with their family, or maybe their partner has come home with this different kind of mood that the entire family is afraid of and expecting. Yes, expecting because they know it's coming. Or maybe the person sitting next to us or passing us by is a person who goes to a pub on their way home, and once they get home, they are waving their fists. Do we recognize these kinds of people? Do we notice them? Are we ready to offer our support? As professionals, we know our role, we know how to behave. However, there are many people around us who could notice, who have the opportunity to notice and help with a kind word or by reporting the problem. I think that we are able to recognize this kind of violence more and more, although oftentimes too late, and we are more able to help both abusers and victims. But there can never be enough support. During the times of the COVID pandemic, which has been for about 18 months, has made the situation even worse. We have had months of lockdowns where families have had to stay at home and they have had to cope in a completely new situation where parents have had to work, do their everyday work, but also work as a teacher for their child or a cook for their family. So times haven't been easy, and we don't know what the long-term consequences and psychological changes will be. The psychological effect of the situation will be seen in the far future. And this is why we need to continue. We need to help people. We need to be stronger. We need to be ready. We need to do it in every front. Research has shown that domestic violence, which is unfortunately mainly committed against women, violates the basic human rights of people. It takes away their basic freedom, their human dignity. And these are actually liberties or freedoms that we consider normal, that we take for granted. People say that they feel that their freedom is being taken away when there are movement restrictions or they are forced to wear a mask. But however, these victims of domestic violence, they are being controlled, they are being restricted, their documents are being taken away, their Facebook account is checked on a constant basis. Social protection and legal protection might seem far away, and the victims might not want to seek for help because they are afraid. We cannot speak enough about domestic violence. We need to start speaking about it at an early age, to school children, to teenagers, so that they would realize that what's happening at their home isn't like this in other people's homes. I remember when I started as a child protection worker in the early 90s, then the stories, I will never forget these stories. A victim of domestic violence might realize at the age of 13 or 14 that things are different at her friend's place. There you aren't being beaten up, you aren't being locked in your room. This is not normal. In 2021, there was a survey carried out throughout Europe, and the picture we see there about Estonia is sad. In comparison to other European countries, there is more physical violence in Estonia. The violator is mostly a family member. One woman in 5 in Estonia has experienced physical violence committed by their partner. In the year 2020, the police was notified of 16,300 cases. We know that this number might have grown. Well, this year it has been similar, but we know that what was happening behind closed doors during the pandemic might have affected this number as well. The cost of domestic violence is estimated to be 366 billion euros. Up and 80% of it is violence against women, and mostly the violence is physical or mental, but also there is also many costs in the field of economy and criminal justice. For example, 14% of economic costs of a state is caused by domestic violence. This is surprising, but this is the way it is. Violence has long-term psychological effects. They might be lifelong. We also know that sexual abuse by the intimate partner causes depression by 35% of the respondents, anxiety in 40% of the respondents, loss of self-confidence in 50% of the respondents, and communication problems in 43% of the respondents. Physical violence also causes depression, anxiety, loss of self-confidence, and communication problems. Violence, especially domestic violence, is hidden. There are different stigmas related to it. Guilt, especially children. What did I do wrong? Was it my behavior that caused this act of violence? Shame. Lately, I was participating in a meeting where we discussed violence against the elderly. There was an 85-year-old lady, and I have known her for many decades. And she has experienced domestic violence throughout this time. And she understands the situation. She would like to step out of it. But there's the shame and also social status, this marriage that's stopping her from leaving. There are many attitudes at play here. Of course, these attitudes also have changed with generations. But people from this generation think that, you can't divorce. You're one family. You are together, even when you're suffering. Guilt and shame are also the reasons that don't let us see the size of the problem in numbers, in statistics. And we don't really know the effect that violence has on our society. It's easier to assess the effect in the case of one victim, one abuser, but the effect on the society as a whole is more difficult to assess. Who else are the victims, except from women, the elderly and children? They are people with special needs, people with mental disabilities. We have heard horrible stories of how a partner of a woman who was mentally disabled was abusing her wife and also let other people abuse his wife. And when an adult woman understands this situation, then a child doesn't. A person with mental disability doesn't understand this situation. They consider this to be the norm. So this is when we need the people surrounding them who would notice, who would help. Community is also very important. The community around us. State can't always come and help. We always don't have a policeman or a judge around, but there's always some kind of community surrounding people. And we need to apply this responsibility of the community. We can't turn a blind eye. We can't just pass these people by. Do you react when you see a parent hurting the child in the street, or when a man who might be a bit tipsy becomes violent with their partner? And do we know how to react? We need to be ready for that as well. It doesn't mean that you step in by yourself. There are other ways to react, but the community needs to know how to intervene. I'm very happy that different ministries in Estonia have joined forces. There is one ministry organizing this conference here today, but the Minister of Social Affairs has also contributed to preventing violence. Also the Minister of Cultural Affairs, the Minister of Justice. So I think that we could improve our state policies in every field. We can always come up with something better. The cooperation between ministries has improved every year. It's becoming more and more efficient. Of course, there is always something lacking. We could always say that, if we had more money, we would do great things. But actually, if we had more kindness, more sense of responsibility, and we would be more brave, then we could do great things. I wish you interesting discussions.